In this video, we are going to create an HTML form. In the next video, we're going to take a look at adding style to that form using CSS. But let's first begin by creating a form in HTML. So to create a form, you need to use the form element. The HTML form element is used to create an HTML form for user input. So a form is where you have things like first name and then the field where the user inputs their first name, last name, and then the user has a field where you input the last name. You might have radio buttons or checkboxes, or you might have submit buttons to submit the form, or other kinds of buttons. Okay. So inside of the form element, you have the input element. So the input element is the most used form element. The input element, it can be displayed in many ways depending on the type attribute. So you can have type is text, where it displays a single line text input field. It could be radio, where it displays a radio button, where you have to select one of the many choices. You can have a checkbox, which allows you to select 0 or many choices. The submit displays a submit button for submitting the form, or you can just have a regular button, which just displays a clickable button. So using the input type, text. So this is where it defines a single line input field for text input, very commonly used. We begin by creating the form element. So the form start tag here and end tag for form here. Then you have the input type and ID and name. So let's first begin with what we know. The form tag, start and end, and then the input with the type. So let's do that first and come back to this. Okay, so here I have form.html saved here, okay, with my HTML structure. So inside the body, I am going to create my form tag. Okay, then I'm going to close it before I forget to. And inside of it, I'll have my input. Okay, and in my input tag, first thing I'm going to have is the type, of course. Okay, type equals text. All right, type equals text. I'm going to be consistent and use double quotations. Oops. There we go. And so we're not done yet here. We have the very basic, structure here, but there are a few more things that we need to add. Okay, let's go back to the PowerPoint and see what they are. So we need to add the ID and the name, and this is so that the data that you enter into this field is going to be usable. So we're not going to learn that in this class. We're not going to learn PHP and JavaScript. But typically we use PHP to kind of do something with the input data that the user puts in the fields. Okay, so in order to be able to do that, you need to have an ID and name. All right, so let's get out of there and go back here. So I'm going to add ID. So ID is going to be fname for first name, and name of the field is going to be fname as well. I'm going to keep it the same. All right, so you might have noticed another element before the input, which is the label. So the label is the label for that field, and it will say that here. Label is for fname, which is fname. This one's fname because this one has a name here, right? If it didn't have a name, then it wouldn't be able to figure out which field is for. So label is for fname. Okay, so label has a start tag and an end tag. Okay, so let's go do that over here. So label and there we go. And the attribute is for fname. There we go. And here we have whatever you want the label to be, first name. Okay. And there you have it. So the style is going to be a default style, whatever the browser chooses to display it as. Okay. So I'm going to go take a look at what I've done so far. Here we go. You have first name, and here I can enter my name in there, right? And there you have it. Very basic text field here inside of a form. All right, so let's go and continue on with the slide. I want to talk about the label a little bit. Okay, the label element. So the label, you're wondering, why do I have the label tag? Why can't I just enter the text label without the label element, right? You could just put it in a paragraph or, or a div or something like that. So the reason why I use the label tag is because it defines the label for the form element. So the label is very useful, okay, for screen reader users, because the screen reader is going to read out loud the label when the user focuses on the input element. The label element also helps users who have difficulty clicking on very small regions. For example, if they have a radio box or a checkbox, which is like very small, and instead of having to only click on that radio box or checkbox area, if you click anywhere within the label element, okay, then you are also selecting the checkbox or the radio box. It makes it a lot easier in terms of usability, okay? So make sure that the attribute for the label tag, okay, the for attribute, it should be equal to the ID and name attribute in the input element to bind them together, okay? So make sure that you have the same name. Make sure that you didn't mess that up, okay? All right, so the next one is the radio element. Okay, so it's not element, sorry, the radio type. So the input type radio defines a radio button. Radio buttons allow a user to select one of a limited amount of choices. Okay, so let's say we've already created the form. So let's say we're gonna have input type radio. Okay, then the ID is going to be Sunday. And the name is fave day. So all these are related. So the first one, the second one, the third one are all for the same group, right? Okay, favorite day, fave day. And then the ID for each one is different though. The first one's going to be Sunday, the second one's going to be Monday, and the third one's going to be Tuesday. Okay? So there's a lot of steps here, so let's do them one at a time. The first thing we're going to do is do the input. Okay, so the input is going to be type, ID, name, and value. Okay, again, that's type, ID, name, and value. So I'm going to end the show here. And let's create our first radio button. So that is going to be input. Okay, so the type is radio. Okay, and then the ID is going to be the date, which is going to be Sunday. Okay, I'd like to leave things all lowercase. Okay, and especially when it comes to values like that. And then the other one is name of the group of radio buttons. So it'd be fave day, favorite day, fave day. Okay, and let's close that. And there we go. And there we have, and then I think we also have the value, which is going to be, what is going to be the name of that button, right? Okay, so let's go take a look. And next we have the label. Okay, we have to have a label for it. So the label is going to be Sunday. Okay, and I see that I have this written wrong here. So label should be for the ID, okay, which is Sunday. And over here should be for Monday. And this should be for Tuesday. Okay. So basically, if you're wondering what the for attribute should match, the for attribute should match the ID. Okay, the for attribute should match the ID. Okay, so this label is for Sunday. All right. So let's give that a try and see how it turns out in the next video.